This is a European bison. Not long ago, they released it in the Romanian part of the Carpathians, one of the biggest mountain ranges in Europe. If you go back in time, it turns out Romania didn't stop at just this one for over 10 years. Now they've been releasing these 1,700-pound giants into their mountains. For example, in this 2014 video, the Southern Carpathians got 18 new individuals all at once, and that's despite the fact that bison eat huge amounts of vegetation. Imagine one, Mayo can chow down about 130 pounds of food a day, and their diet includes exactly what we want to protect: shoots, leaves, all kinds of grass. Besides that, bison can just rub themselves against trees, or even pull them out by the roots. Here, for example, a bison is rolling in the dirt, like it's mocking the people trying to protect the Carpathian nature. Then, one of them digs a hole. Looks like Romania decided to wipe out all mountain ecosystems. But no, every bison released is actually part of a carefully thought out plan to save the Southern Carpathians, which we'll tell you about today. Actually, bison used to roam here and all over Europe long ago. But as you get it, if people are releasing them in Romania, the European giants got problems now. And no, it's not the humans' fault, like it usually is. Recently, the Polish Academy of Sciences ran a detailed simulation and came to the conclusion that European bison population started shrinking 14,700 years ago because of warming and its impact on the species' habitat. However, human influence still played a part here after meeting humans. Bison faced hunting that directly cut down their numbers. Agriculture and logging shrank their living space, which meant there were fewer and fewer bison firearms appeared in the 1500s, boosting people's hunting power to a new level. And right then, the European bison population dropped a lot. By the 20th century, there were only two populations left in Europe, and the strongest one was in the Bolwisia forest in Poland. There were about 600 bison. Their locals tried to save these bison, but then World War I came, and German troops almost wiped out this population. Only 9 animals were left at that time. Wild bison still roamed somewhere out there, and they were even occasionally spotted. That went on until 1927. Many researchers agree that it was then the last European bison was killed. An animal that once roamed almost all of Europe, the outcome was terrible. Not a single wild bison was ever seen again. Only those kept in zoos and private collections, and there were only 12 of them. But let's focus on Romania, more precisely on the Tarcu Mountains, which are the southern part of the Carpathians. According to research, there hasn't been a single wild bison here for 200 years. Now the extermination was again caused by human development, hunting, farming, and deforestation. All of these led to the vanishing of today's heroes here in Romania too. All these processes didn't stop even after the bison disappeared. The mountains turned into something like this. There's not a trace left of the Carpathians as they once were, bare lands. Completely stripped of any forest cover from 2000 to 74,900 forest plots were cut down. As a result, the forest cover of the Southern Carpathians over that period dropped from 5.7 million acres to 5.2 million acres. The decrease was just 8.6%. But even such a small loss of local forest can turn critical. The Carpathians, including the southern part, are recognized as one of Europe's most important and richest nature reserves. Here, you'll find 30% of Europe's flora, the largest populations of brown bears, wolves, lynxes, and rare bird species. On top of that, the Carpathians are listed by the World Wildlife Fund as one of the Earth's most biodiverse ecoregions, and all of this in particular because of the abundant forest cover which is dropped by what might seem like a minor 8.6%. Do you think human impact was limited to just cutting down forests? Of course. Knot meadows have suffered too from intensive farming, a habitat that used to be a hotspot for biodiversity. But now in many parts of the southern Carpathians looks nothing like it did before. In Romania, they realized that bison could actually be the cure for Carpathian forests and meadows, helping restore the ecosystem. The only problem is they're the most hunted animals. So there aren't any wild ones left in the Romanian mountains. In the 21st century, people finally stopped the endless, senseless slaughter, so there are now limited populations of bison in Europe. Plus a proactive group called Reintroduction, backed by the World Wildlife Fund, loaded up some transport and took bison to the Romanian mountains. That's exactly how the biggest European bison reintroduction project got started. So the year 2014 has arrived. Rewilding Europe took bison from breeding stations all over Europe, from Sweden down to central Italy, and then brought them to the southern Carpathians in Romania, to the municipality of Armas. And here they are, 17 giants stepping onto land where their kind haven't been for over 200 years. At the same time, everyone involved in the reintroduction project already understood. This isn't the end of the story. The plan is to build a much bigger population, because the local ecosystems need a lot of help. Actually, the southern Carpathian mountains didn't have to wait long in 2015. And then, every year after that, Europe kept gathering bison from all over Europe and bringing them to the right spots. The last bison release happened on May 31st, 2024, when 14 new saviors of local ecosystems arrived in the Romanian Carpathians, and the total number of animals added to the area has already reached 190. This is already a huge achievement, considering that there haven't been bison here for a couple hundred years, but nobody plans to stop, at least because the 2014 plan aimed to create a population of over 500 individuals, and at most, because bison really do help local ecosystems. Were there any doubts about this? Not at all, because biologists wouldn't call a species keystone for no reason. Imagine a bison is walking through the forest or through a place where only grass grows. Loads of different seeds can catch onto its fur. That way, it already becomes a green carrier. The seeds stuck on it can fall off somewhere else and then start to grow. But that's not all. As you might have noticed, right at the start of the video, the bison loves to roll around. The animal does this on a regular basis. Scientists explain this by saying it helps the bison ease skin irritation caused by insect bites. And there's also the idea that bison have this kind of social behavior. The males pee in a puddle and then roll around in it, showing off their dominance over rivals competing for the attention of a favorite female. But the most important thing is that when a bison rolls around, it clears the ground of plants, including all sorts of weeds if there were seeds on its fur. When it started rolling, the bison basically creates a clean, ready spot for them to grow. And according to Europe, a bison spreads as many as 200 kinds of plants. So its impact on restoring the meadows and forests of the southern Carpathians is already huge. But most of the time, these giants don't carry seeds on themselves. They just gobble up every green thing they come across. The average daily amount of food going inside the animal is 133 pounds. Of course, this cuts down the grass and strips the trees of their leaves, but all that will grow back, while the bison might also swallow seeds along with its food, which at some point come back out again. What happens next? Seeds and manure can sprout, turning into grass or trees, right? Where you'd forgotten greenery even existed, and a bison generates a lot of manure. Plus, there's usually more than one bison around. As unpleasant as it might sound, A lot of manure packed with seeds is basically a booster for areas badly damaged by human activity. At the same time, you can't forget it's a double boost, because everything coming out of a bison is a natural fertilizer that helps plants grow. We've already talked about how beavers are the architects and engineers of ecosystems, and bison are their rightful colleagues. Right now, just 190 individuals in Romania's southern Carpathians help create and maintain a semi-wooded, semi-open landscape. It's a type of area where trees, bushes, and grass coexist. It's neither forest nor meadow, something in between. At the same time, this kind of landscape's quite unstable because it can easily get overgrown with trees, and that's when the bison come in. They munch on the young trees and shrubs holding back the forest growth, which ends up creating those semi-open areas. You might think that bison actually get in the way of forest recovery, but that's not true. First of all, animals spread seeds and can't totally control the spread of trees absolutely everywhere. And second, creating meadows next to the forest, as scientists say, is even better than having a solid forest. For one simple reason, it gives space for more species to live. At Rewilding Europe, they say that restoring semi-open habitats with bison leads to the arrival of many steppe herbivores, birds and insects that had to leave their homes because conditions weren't right, and predators show up too, feeding on other species. For example here, a bison rubbed against a tree leaving some fur behind, then a bird used that material to make its nest. This is a clear example of how, just by existing, a bison can help other species. So everything Rewilding Europe has done is actually a real effective fix for the region, because with bison coming back, the southern Carpathian mountains get serious ecological benefits. But how can you talk about ecology without mentioning cutting down carbon emissions? You might guess bison have nothing to do with that, or maybe just a tiny bit. But the Yale School of the Environment thinks otherwise. They conducted studies there and concluded that bison calmly grazing on the 19 square miles can potentially absorb 54,000 tons of carbon a year. For comparison, if you remove all the bison from that area, it turns out it absorbs 9.8 times less carbon. But what exact effect do bison have on carbon dioxide? They graze processing nutrients that help fertilize the soil and all its life forms. At the same time, the animals compact the soil to stop stored carbon from being released. In short, they just live their bison lives. That's another reason to expand bison reintroduction programs all over Europe and even worldwide, especially since there's a successful example from Rewilding Europe, which has made great progress in this. However, the organization isn't stopping there. It faces a tough goal, making the population genetically viable, as they say at Rewilding Europe. Considering birth and death rates, roughly half of the entire bison population in the Taru Mountains was born in the wild. At the same time, the population's range is steadily growing. It's now estimated at about 143 square miles, which is the fastest range expansion among all similar European projects. Participants explain this by the fact that the animals don't get any extra feeding, unlike several other freely roaming European bison populations. But even with all that for the population to stay genetically healthy, it needs to reach 150 mature breeding individuals. That means the total population should be around 350 to 400 animals. Sounds like this result will take a long time to come. However, Rewilding Europe offers hope if the population in these southern Carpathians keeps growing at the same pace. It is now, there's a good chance that by 2030, their numbers will be between 350 and 450. It's worth noting that actively restoring bison populations isn't a strategy being carried out only in Romania. Many countries across Europe are currently working to bring these giants back to their historic habitats. Remember, We talked about Poland, where after World War I, there were only 9 bison left. By 1964, the population in the country had grown to over 100 in 2014. The number passed 1,400, and by the end of 2019, there were already 2,269 bison in Poland. Then, in 2025, news came out that the bison population hit a record 3,000. It said that the total population grows by roughly 15 to 18% every year. In the end, the country is now rightly considered the world's hub for breeding European bison. The Poles gave their bison such great conditions for breeding that one of the males, named Pual, started to stand out way too much from his peers. You know how you can tell a bison's happy living in captivity. Pual just didn't want to go back to the wild and hang out with other members of his kind. In 2006, they set him free near a herd of bison. The newbie Pual hung out a bit with his own kind, but soon lost all interest in this boring ecosystem architect lifestyle and started looking for contact with humans. He found it in the form of some tourists having a picnic nearby. At first, the people got scared, but then they realized the bison was tame and could only hurt you by clumsy moves. The effort to integrate Pual into the wild didn't stop there. Other attempts were made, but the bison kept ending up somewhere close to people again and again. Pual kept breaking out of his enclosures, after which the bison was often found roaming local villages, wandering between houses, interacting with people, and chasing after cars. You could say Pual even became a culturally significant figure in Poland. He's mentioned in several books and articles. There's a poem and an award-winning ballad written about him. Are there many documentaries made about specific animals? No? But one was made about Pual. In fact, it's the one you're watching on your screens right now. This film even got some awards at a film festival, and then it was shown to elementary school kids back in 2008. All in all, it's tough to find an animal with this kind of popularity and real importance to a specific country. So you could say Poland is kind of a hot spot for talented animals. And that's not all the country of bison's achievements, because thanks to having the biggest animal population, it's also become a donor. Poland has sent its animals, for example, to Romania, which we talked about today. There's info that Polish bison ended up in Russia, Moldova, Denmark, and just recently, in 2024, they got to Portugal. Bison were also brought to the UK, a project called Wilder Bleen, which carried out the reintroduction in the country, made the dream of those wanting to step back into the distant past come true. Bison appeared on UK soil for the first time in 6,000 years. This year, the project was even named one of the biggest changes of 2025. Can you imagine how important restoring the bison population is? For some countries in the end, with significant help from the European Bison Center, there are now about 7,500 European bison living on our planet. Not bad compared to the 12 animals counted last century, right? This growth in numbers proves that humanity does want to fix its mistakes. That's definitely a good thing.